Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Tim Golden, founder of Compliance Scorecard. And Connor, you know what I just realized? My intro video has the old logo, and I have a new intro video that I forgot to pull up today.
Yeah.
Oh, well. Tim Golden, founder of Compliance Scorecard, used to be Compliance Risk. Sorry about the logo. Here with our good friend Connor from Fin. As always, Connor, talk a little bit about Fin, just so our audience knows who, what, where, how, and why.
So Fin is a security awareness training platform built specifically for MSPs. There's a whole bunch of buzzwords I could go through, and some of them are like multi-tenant from the start, monthly billing, monthly invoicing, and actions that scale from one to many. So you're not spending time babysitting dashboards, and that's Fin in a nutshell. And I'm one of the founders.
Love that. And, when I was at the MSP, we standardized on Fin, and I loved that whole, I'm probably going to butcher it, but basically it's set it and forget it, one-click setup, being able to tie in the Microsoft ecosystem, set up the things, and know that I don't have to watch everything every 5 minutes. And now that I'm under Fin and I'm getting, not from my MSP, I'm getting it from Fin, right? You all set that up and get that, now I'm getting the reports. Our staff are being trained. Our staff are getting phished or simulated phished. And, I didn't have to do anything. In a sense, didn't have to do anything, right? And so we're really excited to talk about today's topic. We've kind of had an interesting journey over the last 3 weeks talking about, compliance versus security, right, Connor? Did we have that little war at one point, the little battle?
We did. And my take for the audience, in case you're still, in case you were there listening, is in the same way that the law is an approximation for morality, compliance is an approximation for security. Neither is a complete substitute of the other. So it's don't pretend you have both. If you have one, doesn't mean you can't have both, but it means you need to pursue both, not just one.
Love that. I love that you your love language, speaking to you can't have one without the other. Well, you can have one without the other, but one doesn't prove the other.
Correct.
They can augment each other, right, along the way. And so today's topic, our good friend, I wish we should have brought in Will, or we should have brought in Andy, or talking about insurance and in cybersecurity and compliance. And it's kind of funny because, Will was on our peer group, Wes and Will, a couple days ago talking about insurance. And just out of the blue, I was cyber liability insurance for Cliff, right? And then someone added another F, right? So are your customers falling off the cliff or the cyber liability insurance framework?
Yeah.
So great. We coined another stupid acronym in the GRC space.
Yeah, we don't have enough of those as far as I'm concerned.
No. Well, isn't security awareness training sometimes categorized as SAT, right? At least I've been known to use it like that from time to time.
It is, not to be confused with CSAT, which is customer satisfaction rating.
Yeah, Maureen and I were literally just talking about that. I'm I need to deal with CSAT and NPM and wait, and she's just stop with the acronyms, Tim.
Yeah. I don't think, at large companies, NPS is really valuable. In my mind, it's I talk to enough of my partners, and I expect and enforce that my team talks to enough of theirs as well, our partners as well. Mm-hmm. We kind of have a vibe for, do people like us? Are we doing well? Are we doing poorly? Because if we're doing poorly, we want to fix that way faster than doing some kind of NPS report's going to tell us.
Exactly. And so enough about CSAT and acronyms and mouthfuls of things, even though I kind of live in an acronym world. Compliance and insurance. So maybe we can first sort of level set about some of the standardized things that insurance is looking for.
Sorry, can you repeat that? I got some weird message from StreamYard that there was an issue with LinkedIn. But
an issue with LinkedIn. I don't know. That's weird. Looks like that. Did LinkedIn just break? I don't know. Hey, if you're seeing us on LinkedIn, feel free to give us a little wave or something in the comments, because StreamYard just went berserk because of LinkedIn. Who knows? Um, but yeah, talking about compliance and insurance, what are the things that insurance is kind of looking for these days? And while you kind of answer that, I'm going to go take a peek at LinkedIn.
So, for those of you who haven't watched any of our previous topics, we have some Facebook folks here, I see, or have not had the pleasure of meeting Reed or Dustin or Will from Fifth Wall Insurance, who do a lot of cyber insurance stuff for the MSP industry, really knowledgeable there. There's really five main things, five core tenets of cyber insurance that they're seeing in their policies that they're looking at today. It's user awareness training, MFA on every single account, segregated and immutable backups, managed next gen AV, and then EDR, some
Love
kind of EDR service. So it's like those are the five core pieces. Now, depending upon your company, depending upon a whole lot of things, there are hundreds of other things required, but those five are consistent in 99% of policies that they see. So let's think about that. Insurance is requiring those five things most often. Does compliance require those things most often? And before I get to like compliance frameworks, let's get to the CIS controls, because remember, the CIS controls are not a compliance framework, but it's kind of like a measuring stick. That's how I've always thought about it for cybersecurity is how if you're waiting in line to ride a roller coaster and you must be this tall to ride, the CIS controls are that measuring stick if the roller coaster is cybersecurity, right? It's, are you doing something remotely positive for yourself and for your clients that'll keep you secure? And what does the CIS control say about those five domains? Well, yeah, it looks like the LinkedIn. I see you commented from LinkedIn.
I did. I went to the post. It ain't working. StreamYard borked it. I don't know what the deal is. Well, you know what? It is on YouTube, so we can probably pull that up real quick over there too. So if you are not watching this on LinkedIn, because it is not live on LinkedIn, we are over on Facebook and LinkedIn and YouTube. So yeah, that's really disappointing. All right. We'll regroup. At least it's being recorded
Yeah.
and we can repost it after. So, the 5 or 6 categories of cyber insurance, right? And you mentioned, I love this next gen AV. What the hell is that? But okay.
I've had that debate with Will and Reed and Dustin is what does that mean? And their answer is, and I'll air quote it because you'd go talk to them for their actual cyber insurance angle answer. It's essentially anything above and beyond signature checking. So just looking at virus total and saying this this PDF or attachment is not in any of our known databases for malicious or supposedly malicious attachments. Double thumbs up, you're good to go. This PDF or attachment is not.
I found it on Facebook, so that's good. Next gen AV, so signature based stuff. So things like the old days where we may have had Avast or Norton or whatever, like those aren't necessarily the next generation, right? Because those look at like signature based, right? The hash and the files versus actual threat hunting, actual in-depth stuff, right? So something a little more advanced than your free Avast or your free, Norton that might come with computer, or like, do they even sell computers with Norton nowadays?
Honestly, you could sandbox. You could have a tool that lets the package run, looks at the DLLs that the attachment or the software pulls into its processes, and consider that next gen. Like, all right, we're again, Will's response was anything above and beyond just signature checking. And I was like, what does that mean? And he goes, if you can say we do signature checking and then you insert anything else, next gen AV it is. And I was like, all right, okay. I guess that's
it. From a technical perspective, I might get a little deeper into the weeds, but and then backups, right? So I was talking about this on a different Facebook group the other day, like, what are people using for backups? Are they immutable? Are they separated? Are they out of the ecosystem? Right. And I think we talked about this briefly last week, which in our MSP, we had two. We used Azure backup and Azure site recovery on an ongoing continuous backup. We also used, shadow copy and versioning and blah, blah, blah. So we had one piece of like ongoing minute by minute backups, but then we had a separate platform, a separate backup, completely separate of the entire ecosystem, where stuff was then separated out, different keys, different access, different everything. That segregated backup would help then fulfill our insurance requirement. Not that I don't think insurance is asking for both. They're asking, are you backing stuff up?
Yeah.
Right. I don't think they're getting into the details of that at the moment.
Some aren't. Some do. That's what I've been told. I would also like to point out that a backup that's not tested is about as good as gas station sushi.
Yeah. McDonald's sushi.
It's like, yeah, you can eat this. It's, the FDA can give it the stamp of edibility. Probably shouldn't trust it though, right?
No.
That's how I've always described it. And so one thing to mention there as well is going back on a previous conversation we had in a different episode is what matters most is not that you back up as frequently as possible. You have everything properly squared away. What matters most is that it's the exact level of security your client needs. So I'll give you an example. An accounting firm, a CPA firm, a bookkeeping firm, whatever, somebody who uses their technology and their hardware on a minute by minute basis to do their work, right? To provide their services and make their cash. You should probably consider incredibly frequent backups, like every night. Every night, those workstations should be backed up, stored somewhere, and then you should retest them every so often according to your IR process or whatever tabletopping exercises you're going to do. Let's go to a manufacturing firm, right? Somebody who it's literally a warehouse that manufactures things or stores things and then ships them out. What if could you get away with weekly backups? It's like, yeah, well, actually, there's only 2 computers in this whole place that they need. The rest of it's just other infrastructure to keep the machines running. Okay, so maybe you only need to do weekly backups, and maybe when you test them, it's way less of a burden, so to speak. And so, I'd like to point that out is when you provide any of these services, what matters most is that it's commensurate with the security you think your client needs. And if you don't know what security your client needs, it's probably a really good signal that you should probably go like educate yourself a bit, go to conferences to actually learn, or just attend
And
talks where people like you and I screaming people.
definitely, being able to. Well, so you mentioned what you think your client should be doing for security, right? And so I might not know, right? Or maybe I do know, but does the client even have any idea, right? Chances are they don't. Chances are they're just like, you're the expert, you tell me. And so us being, as educated as we can be as an MSP, we're the technical advisors, right? If I'm going to hire a plumber, I'm going to assume that he's going to know how to do some pipe fitting. Right? I'm going to assume that he knows how to do a little lead soldering and sweat a pipe appropriately. So if I'm an SMB, small business, and I'm hiring an MSP, I'm not going to tell them what backups and how. I'm going to look to them to understand. Yeah, you should be like your data changes minute by minute. So we need to make sure that we're capturing those deltas minute by minute. Or your stuff hardly ever really changes. Maybe a once a night, full once a night, or incremental once a night is okay, right?
Yeah.
And so, as that subject matter expert working for the small business, you need to understand how does their business operate and putting in the appropriate level of stuff that also can meet the cyber insurance requirements. Like, do you have a backup? Yeah, but we don't do it except for once a month. And like our gas station sushi, we never taste it.
Yeah. I always try to remind my partners that everything we're talking about today is incredibly important to the entire sales process and also the entire customer lifecycle management process. So whether it's convincing somebody to work with you to provide services or whether it's convincing them to continue working with you because they're already doing so, all of this can be boiled back to you're creating some kind of transformation in the client that they'll pay for. Most often, it's 2 things: daily peace of mind. In the event of a security incident, they're not going to lose revenue. They're not going to go down. And so those are the 2 places you should always start. Is what does my customer need for peace of mind? most of that comes down to just don't have poor communication. It's like, just be a better communicator. What are you doing? Why are you doing these things? Why do they matter? And the second piece, that comes down to how good of security did you actually put into place? Are the backups really stored somewhere else so that if the network gets infiltrated, it's not going to put the backups at risk, stuff like that.
Yeah, and on Team Tim every Friday we talk about those three things, right? Revenue, risk, and reputation. And sometimes Jesse will say regrets. Regrets. So it helps. You're absolutely right. It is part of that sales journey, part of that client journey. On as an MSP, I am helping to understand and remediate your risks while protecting your revenue and your reputation, right? And so, just these 5 or 6 simple things that insurance are asking for, where does it align? Backups, training, next gen this, like just those 5 or 6 things that insurance are asking. And the reason why they're asking it is because they're starting to see data to support, hey, in the event of a ransomware and you don't have backups versus having backups, that cost is significantly different. So as an insurance carrier, hey, if we just ask them to have backups, that overall cost of that incident might come down because they're not down for a longer period of time. Their data is not gone forever, right? Yeah. So these simple things, 2-factor, security training, right? We're going to get into the security training piece here in a minute. Having these things in place, it's because insurance carriers, again, I'm not the insurance expert, but from Reed and Wilson and all the cool people at Fifth Wall telling us this stuff, they have data that's starting to show 2-factor, less likely to have an event, not that it won't, but less likely if 2-factors everywhere. Backups, less downtime, less revenue loss, less reputation loss if you have a backup, because you can get back up and running more quickly. So where these things align with compliance, well, compliance frameworks, just about all of them ask, do you do security awareness training? Do you do backups? Do you have a disaster recovery plan? While they might expand some of the baseline things that cyber insurance is asking, a lot of them align pretty closely, if not directly.
Yeah. One thing I debate the folks at Fifth Wall Insurance over this a lot, is correlation is not causation, right? It's any person who studies math or statistics will
say, there's your math brain.
Make that evidently clear. But let's talk about that through the lens of a cyber insurer, somebody who's going to be actually underwriting the policy. Well, they look at all this data and they say, well, I'm going to throw out random stats. I have no idea. These are definitely not accurate unless I get incredibly lucky on the here. It's like, well, 88% of breaches involve customers who don't have MFA on. So if we include MFA, like we'll put them all on the 14%. That's not really how interpreting statistics works. It'd be like there was this graph I was looking at the other day, which was like the sale of corn in the U.S. by ton and the exchange rate of the Canadian, the U.S. dollar, and they were 99% correlated. And so I asked myself, it's like, well, does the sale of corn really have anything to do with the exchange rate between the Canadian and the U.S. dollar? The answer is nope, probably not. If it doesn't really exist. But the point there is like, well, if somebody were to take this correlation and say one caused the other, we'd arrive at, oh, look, we can predict the conversion rate because of the price, the amount of corn we sell. That's just not the case. So the reason I bring up all that weird stuff just now is those 5 things that cyber insurance carriers are requiring. That's largely the same process they're going through. They're looking at millions and millions and millions of policies and the thousands of breaches that happen a year. Millions, I don't know how many breaches happen a year individually or get reported. And they're saying, wow, what is the overlap between the customers that do and do not get breached that we write policies for? Let's go make everyone like the companies who don't get breached. And I will say this, you buy a home alarm system, not so that somebody cannot break into your home, right? Anyone with 10 minutes and a box cutter can cut through your siding can cut through your insulation and cut through your drywall and get into your home. It's actually, there are YouTube videos on this, 10 minutes in a box cutter. So a home alarm system is not about preventing a person from breaking into your house. It's so that when somebody who will do something malicious looks at your home and sees the little, the stop sign looking thing that says we're covered by, I don't even know home alarm system company names, but insert ADP or whatever. Yeah, ADT. They're going to look at your home. They're going to look at your neighbor's home. Like, huh, I don't see a sign over there. I'm going to go break into that home instead. That looks better. That's all it's for. And so I think the exact same thing's happening in the cyber insurance world. It's not about, creating security that won't lead to breaches. It's about, well, if our insured end up being harder to breach on average than insert any other insured, most of the crimes of opportunity will happen to other people that we don't care about because we don't have any losses when we have to pay out over there. So,
Right. Well, you make a good analogy. I like to simplify that along a lock, an alarm, a lock keeps an honest man honest, and it keeps the criminal moving to the next house.
it's true.
And so, as we start to dig a little bit deeper, like, how do you think cyber insurance providers are evaluating, the compliance and the cybersecurity? How do you think that they're evaluating that? Like, you were just talking about all big math words. So how do you think that they're kind of looking at that stuff?
I actually just recorded a podcast with Dustin on this exact topic, and he made a statement to me that blew my mind, is that some cyber insurance carriers are getting into the managed services industry. They are buying MSSPs. They are providing services. And our whole conversation was centered around, wait, it's like here in the compliance industry, it's like, well, if we're the person responsible for providing the services, it's a conflict of interest if we also do the audit and sign off on our own work. We can't do that.
Yeah.
Now the cyber insurance is doing that. They're just saying, and it was hilarious. I was like, wait a second, there's no way they would admit to that. And then Dustin goes, you're right. When I called them on it and I emailed this guy and I said, hey, I know you write policies, and hey, I see you're providing MSSP services for the policies. That's a clear conflict of interest. How do you handle it? That person's response was, oh no, those are separate legal entities. So there is no conflict of interest. All right, sure. But it was Insurance Carrier Inc. and it was Insurance Carrier Services Inc. It's like, they're two legal entities. Of course there's no conflict. And Dustin's response was along the lines of, yeah, do you actually believe that? Period. Send. Never got a response.
So. Right. And that's the thing, right? So, coming from the compliance world, right? Fox guarding the hen house, right? Auditing my own stuff, right? That's why things like the ASPCA, like the AICPA exists. That's reasons why the 3PAOs and C3PAO, like, that's the reason why these organizations exist, is because it is an objective third-party company saying you are doing what you're saying you're doing, right? And so when the insurance company spins up Joe's LLC and Joe, Services LLC, it feels wrong, number one, but I think it just is wrong, right? And you are starting to see insurance carriers starting to get into that managed services. But I want to flip that slightly, right? Because maybe, again, I'm way off base here, but maybe as insurance companies start to realize the people doing this work, maybe they feel like they can better protect their customers by having maybe the right group of individuals, maybe the right security postures, maybe backups and the things in place by offering as a different service, right? Is it right? I don't know. I don't think so, but maybe they feel like they can do it better, at least being able to protect their own interests on the other side. I don't know. I don't necessarily agree with that.
Yeah.
Especially since they're encroaching on our space and our MSPs and the people that we, live and breathe and work with all the time. Like, let the experts do the experts. I would never want my plumber pulling electrical wire.
That's true.
He could. He knows how to drill holes in 2x4s and pull pipe, but I wouldn't necessarily want him pulling electrical wires.
Your direct question was, how do cyber insurance providers evaluate compliance with cybersecurity regulations?
Yep.
The questionnaires that your clients are going to fill out and then ask you to attest to, if I'm being honest, I've seen a lot of that. They're getting longer. They're getting more accurate. It's not. I think you brought this. No, Dustin brought this up. It's Sentinel-1 has a passive mode.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cyber insurance carriers' requirements was, do you deploy an endpoint solution? Like, yep, we have Sentinel-1. We're done. There was not a question. There was not a question of, is this on passive mode, which does nothing. It just tells you if it, but doesn't remediate them at all. Essentially, it's like the boy crying wolf over and over and over and over again.
Yep.
Now he's seeing that they actually ask, all right, what is this in? Is it on every endpoint? How is it installed? Are the endpoints on passive mode? How have you configured this? So on and so forth. And so I see cyber insurance providers. I see that. I'll put it this way. Cyber insurance providers are incentivized to make you provide the highest level of security that you will tolerate in your clients that still gets you to pay them that amount for that policy. Because if you don't get breached or you don't make a claim, they make money. In 2021, cyber insurance carriers had 108% loss ratios. That means for every dollar that they made on a policy, they ended up paying out $1.08 on average. Now it's skewed. If you look at the median, that's not the case. But if you look at the average across all the underwriting, that's what happened. And so how are they going to make money? Because at the end of the day, an insurance company exists to make money. And the answer is they're going to make you provide what they believe to be higher quality security. But the issue that I could talk about this forever. The issue there is let's look at other insurance industries like homeowners. Let's look at flood insurance. Let's look at car insurance. The dynamics of how people drive cars has not changed since Henry Ford invented the Model T and standardized cars in 1904, whatever that was. Floodplains change so slowly, they might as well not ever change over the course of a single human's lifetime. And as a result, you have a ton of data. You get a ton of mathematicians in some far off land that's usually just a basement in an office building called actuaries. And they analyze all this data and they say, yep, this home is in this floodplain. And there is a 8% chance that they'll have a flood in the next 10 years and a 1% chance they'll have a flood in the next 1 year. This is how much we want them to pay for this policy. Cyber insurance changes minute by minute.
Yeah, and being the math genius that you are, right? So those actuary tables, that data and historical data over time, like we're talking what, probably hundreds of years insurance has been around?
Thousands.
Right?
Not thousands, but many, many hundreds. Yeah.
They have the numbers, right? So it is very easy for them to be able to predict the likelihood and the impact of something like the 22-year-old in the Lamborghini versus, the 55-year-old in the Honda Accord. Right?
I drive a Honda Accord. I don't know what that tells. What that
I drive a Honda Accord. That's all I've ever driven was Honda Accord. Well, okay, most of my adult life has been Honda Accords when I've been able to afford to buy an Accord, usually used. But that's the point that I'm trying to make. The cyber insurance, like the data's just not there yet. And what they're starting to see bits and pieces of like 2FA, okay, that I'm going to tweak this dial 2FA. I'm going to tweak that dial backup. I'm going to tweak that dial next gen thing. Like they're starting to see some of those pieces and get that data to be able to then make the adjustments, right? What did you say? For every $1 spent, it was $1.08 paid out
on average. I think that was from 2021. Yeah.
Yeah. So even if it's just say 10 cents a dollar, I mean, the math on that of what they're paying out, they're losing 10 cents for every dollar. Like that's huge, right? Economy of scale, right? You do that by thousands and thousands and thousands of like that economy of scale gets really expensive for insurance carriers paying stuff out. And so if they can tweak one dial and bring that to 7 cents and tweak it again to 0 cents and then get it to the negative, now insurance is profitable again.
Well, that year is pretty much why insurance policies, insurance questionnaires went from do you have a heartbeat and what's your ARR to here's 30 pages of questions. Please make sure you answer them correctly. And this Facebook user.
I was going to bring this up. So this is Lisa. Lisa, thank you so much for listening. Okay. I know you're over on Facebook, and for whatever reason, it doesn't pull your username. But Lisa, thanks for this question. Go ahead.
This is what I would recommend. you, you as an MSP, if you answer this questionnaire and you sign your name on it, you are liable, right? You're liable there is liability attached. So I'll leave it to you if you want to do that. Here is what I discuss with the folks at Fifth Wall Insurance all the time is, are your clients enough of cybersecurity experts to answer all of those questions and to go through that checklist on their own? I hope the answer is no. Most of the people who work with you, they work with you because you're an expert in cybersecurity or IT, and you're providing those resources to them. So it would be expected of you to sign off on those things. Going back to a comment I made about all this boils up into the sales process, what do you think a really easy way to convince your client that they need to do something, not that they want to anymore, that would create additional security? Well, it's when you
Yeah,
answer a cyber insurance policy and you send it back with blanks and they say, why isn't this filled out? And you say, well, you refuse to do these things, so we can't attest to them. Boom.
exactly.
All of a sudden, they can't get cyber insurance or their rate goes through the roof. And it would actually be cheaper for them to just buy your services at that point. I've seen a lot of cases like that. And the
Mhm.
last part of your question, Lisa, was protection from insurance agency from fraudulent information that may cause a claim to be declined. Yes, absolutely. The one rule, don't ever lie on an insurance questionnaire. If you just say you don't do something, that does not mean you're going to get denied. Will, Dustin, Reed, everyone that I've ever talked to in cyber insurance has made that infinitely clear. Just because you say you don't use insert newfangled technology with an acronym so sweet, it makes HIPAA look bad. I don't know. Um, doesn't mean you're going to get denied. It doesn't even mean your rate's going to increase. It just means they're gathering data. Now, that could change in the future because they're going to start to understand that people who don't use certain tools get breached more frequently. But you, as the MSP, if you answer that fraudulently, you will absolutely be held liable. And there are also these little tiny things called carve outs and
Yeah,
sublimits, where
sublimate.
a very common example is if somebody's email gets compromised as a result of you didn't do awareness training, it'll say, well, we're only going to pay $250,000 out of this $1 million policy in the event that it came through business email compromise because of XYZ reasons.
Mhm.
Well, in
Yeah,
that case,
supplements are a whole nother ball of wax, right? Like, and I'm not well versed enough about them, but the little that I've learned from our friends at Fifth Wall,
yeah,
like, you make a good point. Don't lie, not because well, yes, because you'll be held accountable because it's the right thing to do, right? And I want to bring this back, right? Respond and leave it blank. I love that because, listen, you've probably heard me say this analogy a dozen times, and I'm going to keep saying it, right? Because I love analogies. When my kids and my daughters were dating, I could never tell them who or who not to date. I could never say, not a good fit. I could never do that, right? It would just not be good as a dad trying to tell my kids who they should and shouldn't date. But her best friend could. Her best friend could speak into her life about who she should or should not date, right? So, as the MSP, as the dad, being or the brother, or going to the our SMB, telling them you need 2FA, you need bag, blah blah, like trying to, like, you just want to sell me services. Well, now you can pull in that insurance conversation. You can pull in the Wesses and the Reeds and the Wilsons and the Andys from Fifth Wall as the best friend, and they can be the big bad person telling you who you can and cannot date, or what you should and should not implement. By the way, the same thing is true for compliance, if I should just say that. So, like, you don't have to be the bad guy anymore.
yeah.
You've been yelling at them for years, 2FA, 2FA, 2FA. Well, great. Now you can pull in the insurance company or the compliance guy and say, yeah, you're going to fail this thing. Your rates are going to go through the roof, or you might not even get it, period, because you're not doing the simple things that we've been trying to help you do along the way. Right. So that, I love that conversation of bring them in and make them the bad guy instead of us as the MSB.
And also, they're the licensed insurance experts. So, if you give advice on insurance, I remember there are two things you're absolutely not supposed to do. Don't tell
Yeah.
people how much how high they should make their limits, like what amount of coverage they should get, and don't tell them if they are or are not abiding by the policy correctly. That's one, not your job to decide those two things, and two, way outside of the scope of your relationship. And also it's, very illegal to talk about insurance like that if you're not a licensed insurance agent.
Yeah, there is definitely legal ramifications about giving the wrong advice, and the best advice is to not give it and pick up the phone or go to fifthwallsolutions.com and say here. Or, all right, I'm going to plug, or work alongside Compliance Scorecard and Fifth Wall Solutions to generate that information to just seamlessly hand off to Fifth Wall to start those conversations, right? So our integration is ready to go. Sorry, slight plug, but here's the thing. Don't lie about it. Bring in the right people, and careful what you recommend, especially around cyber insurance. Don't do that. That's why there are experts, right? My plumber might be able to recommend what fixture he uses in his bathtub, or what light fixture he would suggest in our bathroom, but I'm going to have the electrician install it, buy it, purchase it, secure it, and deal with it, right? So we have a couple of other questions in here. We wanted to talk maybe a little bit about incident response plans. Do you have, I can talk IRP all day long, right? So I'm going to kind of throw that at you. How do IRP, or incident response plans, kind of influence both insurance and compliance?
I actually applied for my own cyber insurance for Finn. And we also got director and officers insurance, and we also got tech E&O insurance. Got a whole different levels of insurance at this point that we have to have
Yep,
in order to exist.
you do.
And it was shocking to me that our tech E&O and our cyber insurance applications, there were questions in there that was, do you have an IR plan? That was question 1. Question 2 was, when's the last time you tested it? And question 3 was, if you don't have one and you haven't tested it, will you sign here on the dotted line that you will create one and test it within the next 12 months?
Oh, interesting.
And I was shocked that I got all 3 of those answers on what I imagine is a incredibly small policy for the size of that carrier. Chubb is a $1 billion company, like multi-billion dollar company.
If I could share here a little bit, since we've been talking all about Fifth Wall for the last half an hour. So we worked together with Fifth Wall to build out, a baseline cyber incident response plan way back during an event with Ninja, our good friends, Ninja RMM. And so, we have a baseline template for that. I'm just going to stop sharing because I definitely hate plugging our stuff. But back to what you said about your tech E&O and your cyber insurance. We too, same thing, went through our tech E&O, went through our cyber insurance. And they asked, are you doing it? They didn't ask, are you willing to sign that you will test it? That's new, or at least it's new to me anyways. I feel like that's interesting. Like, test it and then prove to us that you tested it when you tested it. I don't feel like that feels new to me.
It's all self-attestation. So it's not like you need to do this in front of us. It's like, will you rep that you've done this? And I, don't ever lie on an insurance policy. It'll come back to bite you for sure at some point. But I'm shocked that they even asked. It's like, wow, cyber insurance policies have really changed in what they ask for.
Well, I think that talks a little bit about like they're maturing themselves, right? So we talked about this, 10 minutes ago, about the actuary tables, the data pieces, right? So now they tweaked another dial. Do you have backups? Do you have IRP? Okay. Now they determined, like, great. So you downloaded a template, you copy pasta company name, and you thought you were done.
I mean,
okay,
honestly,
well, actually did. No, I'm saying this in general.
No, like, that would satisfy most requirements. Like, if you did that, if you put your company's name at the top of the letterhead, and then if you spent 20 minutes reviewing it with your other directors, boom, you just went over your IR process, you just reviewed it, and you have one in place. You're done. It's like, so it's still in its infancy, but it's getting there.
Right. Right, and I think that's where the industry is starting to mature, right? And so, do you have it? No, but I'm going to go Google that before I finish the questionnaire, and then I'm going to download some template, and then blah 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 blah. And like, yes, I do. Okay, now take it a step further, as you just pointed out, Connor. Have you reviewed it, and have you actually tested it, and will you sign off in a testing that you tested it? Oh wait, that's new. Um, okay. So
Yeah.
maybe this template isn't exactly what I need and isn't how we're doing things, right? And so I mentioned my template that I worked with on Fifth Wall building. There's a key component in any incident response plan that I want to make sure, regardless of where you get your template, regardless of ChatGPT or how you start or what you do, there's a one major differentiator that you should consider, and that is in that process, there needs to be a big, bold, red block of something that says, stop here and call your insurance company.
Yep.
So, containment, right? If we think about an IR process, did we identify it? Did we contain it? Our, business operations, stop here and call my damn insurance company and call the FBI and call stop here and make the phone calls, right?
Yeah.
Because your insurance company is going to have different processes in place for investigation. They're probably going to have their own team for investigation. And chances are, if you start remediating and dealing with stuff, you're probably going to screw that up and not get paid.
Yeah.
So in the event of an incident, we don't want to use the word breach anymore, right? That's a whole nother conversation.
I had that exact conversation with Brad Gross at a conference recently, where it's like, what does an MSP do? It's like your client's on the hook, right? And they're calling you, and they're panicked, and they're freaking out. They're like, my business doesn't, I can't do any business, or people are ransom. I'm like, what's going on? And his his statement was something to the tune of, well, if you have a cyber insurance policy and you had an IR process and you reviewed it, you should know exactly who to call, exactly what not to do, which is usually you do not start your own recovery process, disaster recovery process. You inform the proper people, and then you say, what should I do? And then you go do it. Because there is a chance, like you said, where you can introduce more liability to the company itself if you do something that your carrier would have paid for anyways,
Right.
and then deems that you did incorrectly and cause more damage. And it's just
Exactly.
not a legal
And even insurance aside, you did something incorrectly and caused more damage. That comment that you just made right there, right? I'll be the first to admit that, I've done that. I'm fixing this tweak and okay, good. But then I blew up 20 things over here. Oh crap. So, and I've done that. I've been known to do that. Like Connor, you've written code and you know what that's like when you write a little function to do a thing, but you forget all the other pieces that it can impact. Right.
They don't let me write code anymore for a reason.
Yeah, I don't either.
Not because I was good at it.
I don't. We have people for that. Don't get me wrong, I'm still writing code, but nothing to do with the platform.
Yeah.
So, let's kind of bring this full circle. I know we've got like 15, 20 minutes left. Let's talk about the human factor in any of this stuff, right? Because this is really where Finn starts to shine. And I love the word that you use, which is human vulnerability management. Right? I'm stealing that everywhere I can. I'm borrowing that and helping advocate for human vulnerability management everywhere that I can because I think it's important, right? Humans are vulnerable, not because, well, in part because we are stupid sometimes, but in part because we don't know better.
Yeah. Hey, steal it, make it your own. Say you came up with it. Doesn't matter to me.
No.
I'm sure I didn't come up with it.
Credit where credit is due, but talk about the human factor a little bit, both, and how it relates to insurance and compliance and those kinds of fun things. And where do they intersect?
So in insurance and compliance, Verizon's data breach and investigation report releases statistics every year. For those of you who don't know, it is, in my mind, the most comprehensive report on worldwide cybersecurity breaches that happen over the course of a year. And a stat that they track is what percentage of breaches involve humans? And the answer consistently, going back as long as the DBIR has existed, is north of 85%. It's like 86% as of 2022, I believe, because they haven't released 23 yet. Is humans making mistakes, causing breaches. And it blows my mind that we live in a world where the majority of breaches are not because of the software people uses, but because of the mistakes people use when trying to work with them. And I see so many people harping on, we need newfangled technology, insert this brand new acronym into your stack and we'll all be saved and you'll never worry about breaches again. And then it's like, I hate to use the pedantic example, but somebody saying, hey, can you change the banking information on this invoice for me real quick, is like the number one source of losses for most businesses. It's like,
Yeah.
that's not high tech. It's like, if
Yep.
let's say, compliance risk. I buy compliancerisk.com with an L instead of an I, and I email every vendor that I know you work with, which I'm sure if I looked on your LinkedIn, I could go find some. And I
Mhm.
say, hey, I need you to pay this invoice. I don't see a record of it. Please give me money. So how many people would pay that? I don't know. I'd probably get some success. Um, that's where
Mhm.
most of the error comes into play. And so, um, the fact that cyber insurance policies, 2 of the 5, are directly a result of humans using things incorrectly. Awareness training, MFA everywhere where possible. That does, MFA does apply to robot accounts, and we could talk about that some other time. But it's mostly people logging into things and not using break glass accounts and sharing admin pass, all the BS that we all know happens because it's convenient.
Right.
Um, and then you look at these measuring sticks like the CIS controls, and there's an entire control dedicated to training your people properly.
Mhm.
Um, so cyber insurance recognizes this at the very least. The CIS controls recognize this at the very least. And I would say my statement about compliance frameworks is they're doing their best. They're giving it the good old thumbs up try here. They're like, there's in 800.171, there's 3.2.1, 3.2.2, and 3.2.3. It's like
Yep.
there are 3 subpoints for the entirety of teaching humans to recognize breaches. Now, you could say MFA and other stuff that is also required applies to humans, but there's only 3 subpoints that directly call out you need to train your people on certain things.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know. So we're seeing increases.
So I have an interesting thought that just came to mind, and I could be way off here because obviously you guys are the experts in training the human, right? I mean, I did kind of work for an educational company for a while, so I have a little bit of background knowledge on
Yeah.
that. But maybe I'm just gonna throw it out there. Could it be a generational thing? And let me before you dive in, right? So when we look at the current workforce, right? The teens, the 20s, the 30s year old people, and I hate to say and stereotype or whatever, but they've kind of grown up with technology.
It's true.
It's always been there, right? For us, for me in the 50s and 60s and like the little older generation, for us, like heck, my TV had a wired remote and was in black and white. So I
Yep.
wonder if part of this is a generational thing where maybe in 10 years, this will never even be a conversation, or at least parts not being like, don't click stuff because we've taught them from
Yeah.
grade school on. I don't know. Is it a generational thing?
I definitely think there are trends in with generations. The less technically capable an individual is, the greater the at much greater risk they're at. So you think of the elderly, you think of your parents, your grandparents, whole 9 yards.
Mhm.
So I definitely agree with that. However, I actually gave a talk about this at IT Nation Connect last year, and it
Yeah.
is, why is this a problem in general? And it's not because there's new technology that even I wasn't born with. Like, I was not an iPad kid, and that's a phrase that people use today, right? iPads didn't exist until I was like 17 or something like that. Um, iPhone didn't exist until I was 14, and so I didn't grow up with these things either. Now, I'm not super vulnerable to attacks through those things because I'm kind of native in those things. But my entire talk at IT Nation was surrounded by humans, not old humans, not young humans, all humans. We are predisposed, we are biologically wired to fall for deception, to fall prey to it, to believe people, to believe things. In fact, I'll actually plug, there's a movie called The Beekeeper right now with Jason Statham. It is a movie about cybercrime towards the elderly. Even though it's an action movie, it is a Baller movie. Loved it. I loved the entire movie. You should go watch it. It's called The Beekeeper. But so no, I don't think it's specifically a generational thing. I do believe that those who are less technically abled are at greater risk. That typically ends up being the elderly, my parents, my grandparents, stuff like that. But everyone's at risk.
That's interesting. I'm going to just drop that link over here because, why not? Is it going to show up? It isn't going to show up. I was hoping it would show up in the comments. Great movie, by the way. So you're right. We are, by nature, somewhat easily deceived.
Yeah.
Right. And this is why, cyber insurance talks about, phishing and talks about simulation and training and dealing with phishing. I've been caught, right? We use Fin. I just got my monthly report and I was like, oh, one person failed the phishing. And I looked and I was like, oh crap, it was me.
Yeah, what did I do?
Okay. Last month it wasn't me. This month it was me. Damn it! And then I had to remember what the hell did I do? And then I, went into the platform. I saw what it was, and I was like, oh, yeah, because it literally looked like something. Like, yeah, I got caught, right? So here I am as a compliance guy admitting that I got caught. I got deceived. I clicked the wrong thing. Because they're getting better and better and better, and heaven forbid that these AI tools that can then automate that stuff more and more and more, right? So, yeah, I mean, humans by nature, as you said, we're kind of easily deceived. I think because we're probably trusting in nature for the most part.
Yeah.
Right. We want to believe that people are out to do good or whatever, and we get tricked pretty quickly,
And for those of you listening who think that doesn't apply to me, it absolutely does. Unless you can explain to me how you can escape your own biology, whole nother set of questions involved there. Let me know how you're not vulnerable to deception. And I was just trying to look it up actually, and I couldn't find it. I remember reading this report that was somewhere out of the UK about how security people are just as vulnerable to social engineering as non-security folk.
I mean, me. Yeah. I'm a compliance guy, and I click the thing. Oops.
The MGM hack that happened a few months ago. That was on security personnel and help desk employees. Like, those are the people who are telling people not to make dumb mistakes, and then they make the dumb mistakes. So everyone is vulnerable to this. I think I will say this. The number one thing everyone in the world needs, but also the security industry in specific, is a huge, healthy dose of empathy. We're all in the same boat. We're all on the same team. We're all rowing together. It does not make sense to cut off the arms of the other person who's trying to row with you, because then you all just row a little slower. So
I love that. It ties right into the whole, rising tides and ships and all that fun stuff too. Yeah. So as we wind down here, I tend to try to leave with at least one or two key takeaways. Connor, I'm going to pull you up here real quick. Tell us, give us one good nugget, two good nuggets as a key takeaway.
Cyber insurance, even though it is, that word is combined of the two scariest words known to man, cyber and insurance. It does not need to be a scary subject. Reach out to a cyber insurance expert. I happen to love all of the folks at Fifth Wall Insurance. So go take a look at them and tell them that Connor said horrible things about them, and they'll probably have a really good laugh. But reach out to them. And one thing I'd like to leave you with is you can use cyber insurance requirements and policies as an opportunity to have conversations about sales. Most partners that I work with, the thing that they always ask for is they need more demand and they need more sales. Cyber insurance is a great tool to not only create additional security, but you turn that vitamin into a painkiller, where if you've ever heard that analogy, you're no longer a vitamin for that client. You're solving a pain, a problem, which is they don't have cyber insurance and they have to use you in order to make that happen.
Awesome. I love that. And you stole my nugget, but that's okay. I'll come up with another one.
Sorry.
No, you're good. So at least from us, right? As you're dealing with insurance forms, as you're trying to have that conversation with your customer, right? Obviously, we said don't lie on the forms. In fact, the less you put in it, as Connor said, the better it's going to be for your sales process, right? And bring in the big brother or the sister or the best friend so that you don't have to be the bad guy. Let them be let Will and and Reed and Andy and all of those good folks at Fifth Wall be the bad guy. And by the way, if you've looked at any of their LinkedIn posts and all their memes, they're not really bad guys.
Yeah.
But they can play one in the insurance TV world, right? So, Connor, this has been great. Our series has been fun. Maybe we can do some more in the coming months or weeks. We're really happy to have you here on on these live streams and these conversations. It's been a fun little journey talking about insurance and compliance and security and all these fun topics over the last couple of weeks. I'm a little bummed that it didn't work on LinkedIn. I don't know, StreamYard, dumb. I was literally on one like 10 minutes, but like I jumped off that one and jumped on this one, and that one worked, and I don't know, whatever, technology, right? But it will be on LinkedIn for those of you. I'm sorry, it will be on YouTube. We'll make the recording available so Connor's team can put it up on Finn's page after. I do apologize for those that were looking for it on LinkedIn. And you know what? We will see, hopefully, some of you next week at Right of Boom, or maybe the following week at CompTIA's CCF. Connor, I'm looking forward to seeing you again in real life. Maybe is that the new Finn shirt?
No, this is a special limited edition for team members only, but we do have a new shirt that you will get.
Awesome. Well, I know I'm like multitasking. I just saw in my email over there, our new compliance scorecard t-shirts are ready to be picked up today. So maybe I'll go pick them up, or maybe I'll blow off conversation. No, I have things to do, but we will definitely have our own new compliance scorecard t-shirts there. Thank you, everybody, for attending the last 3 sessions. Connor, always good to see you. Always good to have you on. We look forward to seeing you next week.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Tim. It was a blast.
All right. Let's do, you know what? I still don't have the exit video. All right. I'll make one of those. Everybody have a good rest of your week. We will see you at Right of Boom.